Hi, Mike. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing very well, thank you. I've got Mike Wendt here. That's how we say your name, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Yep. Got
Just checking. I should have checked. Anyway, um, Mike wears a lot of hats. So, Mike, would you mind introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about what you do?
Sure. So my name, as you mentioned, my name is Mike, and I work for the Greater Cleveland Film Commission. I am the production coordinator. So there's a lot of facets that go into that, but basically, I'm one of the first lines of communication when a film or television show or series is thinking about coming to Northeast Ohio. So I basically sell the city, let them know of how they can do it, and let them know that we have a great crew base here. We have very talented actors. So that's really the main part of it, and just make sure that these films come into town. The other parts of my job are maintaining the location database. So I go out and scout a lot of different places, just so the filmmakers know that there's all these like really awesome places to film here. And then I also maintain the crew database. So anybody who wants to be listed, and sometimes when different producers are coming into town, they use our database to give them a call to see if they can work on the film.
Oh,
So
cool.
that's the film commission part of my job. I'm also a filmmaker, so I have directed, I've produced, I location managed and location scouted. It's there's a lot of different hats, and I'm just kind of really proud to be part of this the film community here in Cleveland, and really just want to help raise the profile.
Awesome. Well, that's how I found you in the first place, is I had reached out to the Greater Cleveland Film Commission asking what regular people, regular actors, and, people in the industry can do to help further your mission. And I believe it's one of your colleagues who forwarded my channel to you.
Yeah.
And then
Yep.
I saw that you followed it, and I'm like, I know that name. So I followed up, and here we are. So I have a lot of questions for you. To begin with, how did you get into the industry to begin with? Did you always want to be a filmmaker?
Yeah, it's a great question. As at a young age, I always had interest in film, and I think I was fortunate to have, we didn't, in my house, we didn't really have cable until, I was probably in my, close to like high school. So I felt somewhat sheltered in that regard. But my grandparents had cable, and they had HBO. So I used to watch a lot of stuff when I would go over there. And a lot of times during in between the movies, they would have these making ofs,
Mm.
something like that. And that's where I kind of started to see the behind the scenes stuff. And I was like, wow, like that stuff like really kind of appealed to me and just looked so cool. And so I started to get a lot of different books and everything. And eventually, once we did get cable in my house, we watched a ton of movies. And my parents were always very good about letting me watch R-rated stuff. So I probably watched more movies as a youngster than most people got to. So I don't know, just the love of movies really got me into it. So when I was getting ready to graduate high school, I started to look at different places to go. And it's one of those things where I think in high school, I was very much, um, I was involved in a lot of different things. So college, I was also the first born in my family. So college was like, for me, I was kind of like the guinea pig, where didn't know a lot about like the PTSA stuff until later, and all that, ACTs and everything. So I didn't really score super great on them. So I think I scored myself out of some of those big schools. So I ended up going to the University of Akron, really got immersed in the TV and radio program there, and got to intern in New York City at Tribeca Film, which is Robert De Niro's company. And from there, I've never looked back, just kept pursuing things, and once I was finished up with that internship, came home and just started working and haven't really stopped.
That's awesome. Do you know the Nightlight in
Yep,
Akron?
absolutely.
I was just talking to Corey Sheldon, and I know Miriam Bennett as well.
Yeah.
And I'm in love with the Nightlight. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Akron's pretty cool for those who haven't been there, like the downtown area. I like it.
Yeah. I recently,
From Akron?
well, I recently moved back to that area. So I grew up in the Cleveland area, but went to Akron because I got this, I think my junior year of high school, I got like a scholarship to go spend a couple weeks there in the summer. But my wife she co-owns a gym in Cuyahoga Falls. So we recently purchased a home here. So I've been going to the Nightlight a little more often than I used to when I lived more in Cleveland. So it's great to get kind of reacquainted with the Akron area, because it is kind of it is like almost like a cousin to Cleveland, and sometimes I feel like it's a little bit neglected, but they do have a lot of great stuff, and it is a real, there's a lot of talented artists that live in Akron as well.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. I'd like to explore it more.
Yeah.
So speaking of location, did you start scouting locations when you became a part of the Greater Cleveland Film Commission? Is that how that ball got rolling for you?
Well, it's kind of funny. When I first started to work in the film industry here, I was very much somebody who wanted to be in the camera department. And so I worked in a lot of lower budget things in the camera department. And then eventually I was able to, get into some of the grip and electrical department. But I started to kind of quickly realize that there are a lot of talented people who are in the camera department, and sometimes there are only so many roles that you can have. So I had to slightly pivot if I wanted to get the work. And at some point it was suggested to me that, you know a lot about the city, you know a lot about the area, and you also like camera, so why not pursue location scouting? So yeah, basically with locations, I would say I kind of fell backwards into it, because like I said, because it was like, I was getting certain jobs, but I wasn't getting called for all of them. And basic locations is one of those departments that is very essential for the films, but is not always the most popular. It's not like the most popular position to have, because there's a lot of logistics that go into it. It is usually you work the longest hours on set, aside from like transportation. So like it's basically you open the set, you close the set, wherever you film. So that sometimes can be not so appealing, because it's going to be a long day. Also, you have to deal with sometimes like street cones and putting up street barricades if you're going to be shutting down the streets, and you can get really dirty. But I think when I started doing this, it's like I started realizing, this is it's such an important role, and it's one of those things where you are able to really make an impact on the film by helping show these locations and everything. So yeah, it's I'm not gonna lie, it's not the easiest job, but it can be very rewarding for a lot of people who decide to get into that, because a lot of locations people end up being producers or production managers of the films.
I was going to ask about that. And like, especially in smaller productions, I would imagine that the producers end up taking on the locations scouting and management sometimes, right? Like there's
Yes.
always one person for every role. So the producer, it sounds to me, based on the various people I've asked about, okay, what is producing exactly? You know, I'm
Yeah.
always curious of people's definitions of different roles as I learn more and more about the industry. And it
Yeah.
sounds like the producer does a lot.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, the producer is, I mean, they basically see the project through the inception of the project to the hopefully distribution of the project. So a producer's life on a film could be upwards, not just months, but it could be years. I mean, a lot of times when certain movies are up for awards, it's always great to listen to those panels when producers are talking about how much it took to get this thing made. Yeah, I think locations are sometimes some of the first people hired on a movie, so you work very closely with the producers. So I think that's why a lot of locations people end up becoming it, because they have to manage a budget, they have to adhere to all the confines and that are given to them. So I think that's why it really that lends itself to that other career path.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So walk me through the process of locations. I mean, I know that there's finances involved. Are you in charge of that? Like, how do you get permission for places? How do you shut down streets?
Yeah.
What's involved? And then once I get a better idea of what the process is, I would love to hear about like how you open the set that day and
Yeah.
how you close it. Like, what does that entail? So please teach me.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, basically, it all starts, of course, with the script. The script is like the guide for everything. And so a lot of times when working on a movie in your approach to location scout, you have to read the script, of course. And then usually a talk with the director or the writer is sometimes very helpful to kind of get an essence of what they're going for. Now, some directors will provide what's called a lookbook, which is typically pictures from previously shot films, or sometimes just pictures that they might have taken on different scouts. Because sometimes they, you know, unless like it's written specifically for a place like Cleveland or Akron, a lot of times they are looking at multiple cities at the same time. So once you get a sense of what they're going for, that's when we go to work and we start to take photos of different things that will hopefully match what they're looking for. So in each of the script, as you're reading the script, each scene has a headline like, interior bar or exterior park. Those are always helpful. And sometimes when you're reading it, the script will have certain descriptors that indicate what kind of bar or what kind of park. But sometimes they don't. So that's when, hopefully you can have a good rapport with the producers and the director who can give some direction as to what they're looking for. Then you take the pictures and you make contacts with all the places that you go, and you present them to not only the director but also the production designer. The production designer has a great look over, or a great sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. They have a great influence over the look of the film. And then sometimes you're also sharing it with the cinematographer to see if it would work for them as well.
When
And
you
then
when you say contacts, do you mean contact sheets of images, or do you mean contacts like phone number, names of people?
oh yeah, yes. So like the contacts of all of the different locations. So because you don't want to present a place that is not interested, you know
Right.
what I mean? So you want to have somebody, that you already have their kind of thumbs up that they can come by. Now, then it always becomes like, does it match the dollars that they hope that they're going to get for each location, which sometimes can be trouble. But so basically, from there, that's when you typically, with the film commission, like we would fly the filmmakers in, because like you can share the best pictures in the world, but until sometimes they actually walk through the location, that's when I think they really start to visualize what they can do with these locations. So then from there, it just, say if they do like it, then you bring in more people. So eventually you have what's called a tech scout, which is all the department heads of a film, to see if the locations will work.
Like with
So
the camera and the light
exact
and everything.
camera, then you have art department, then you would also have sometimes the sound department comes, because it could be a great location visually, but maybe there might be some bad pipes or something, and it's going to be a sound issue. So that's why you bring the sound person, so they know if it's going to be a problem or not.
And
So
art department, forgive me for interrupting. Art department is like set design.
correct.
They don't do
Correct.
props too, though, right? Props is separate.
Yeah, so props is a separate department within the art department, but you would have typically the art director and the production designer. So they would, they determine what changes they can make to each location to alter it to look to what the film is supposed to represent.
Okay, and does that include like a knowledge of visual effects? Like, well, we could cover this up, or like, oh, we could just do that with the green screen, or we can just like cheat the camera this way and miss that ugly thing, or
Yeah, I mean, they sometimes do bring a visual effects supervisor on a tech scout as well, just to determine if they have to do that. They usually try to avoid it because visual effects can be very expensive, but every film has it. But you try to find as close to a practical location as possible, that doesn't like break the bank and everything. Or sometimes, like, you can simply provide a space and then let the art department decorate the heck out of it, and it looks, they can transform something that looked horrible. Like currently we have a movie in town about the life of LeBron James, and basically I helped them find an old shut down school, and they painted it, or I mean, they have decorated this thing. It was I think it's been closed since like 2010 or so. So it's been shut down for a while. So there was a lot of dust, and some of the paint has faded, and they made this look amazing. So it's sometimes really just incredible to see what the art department can do.
I can't wait to see it. That's
Yeah.
fascinating. What about period pieces? Scouting locations for period.
Yeah, period pieces that can be really challenging, but it's a lot of fun, especially in Cleveland. We have a lot of older architecture that a lot of cities have kind of gone away from their older architecture. So we obviously have newer buildings, but there are sections of town that you can capture the a period look. So for example, Judas and the Black Messiah that shot primarily off of Broadway and East 55th. It has a lot of older buildings there. And so the scout who worked on that, his name's Tim Kineski, he did just such an amazing job, capturing what Chicago 1969 would look like. And he did it just by using some of these reference photos. And he went to work and he found him, and and obviously the movie was a very, very good success.
Amazing. When it comes to shutting down streets and things, contracts, I mean, how much does a location cost?
No, Once again, that's a great question. So to shut down streets in the city, say, for example, just the city of Cleveland, the city is very good to work with. They have, they basically, when you're talking about doing this, we have several meetings. It's called the steering committee. So when you have those meetings, you meet with different people from police, fire department. You talk with sanitation in case you have to shut down a street where the garbage is supposed to be picked up. You also talk with the electric company. So say if like you want to have some of the, you don't want like street lights on at certain points.
Oh,
Uh,
interesting.
a lot of directors of a lot of cinematographers will ask for the street lights to be off because they would supply their own kind of lighting. And the city usually will give permission, and they keep the permit costs very low. So it's $20 per permit. But that also, not just $20, but then you have to have officers at each of the closures. So you typically have 2 officers at each closure. So, the costs can somewhat add up, but in other major metropolitan filming areas like New York City, Los Angeles, their permits are upwards of hundreds of dollars. So, the fact that in Cleveland, you keep it about 20 is pretty good. And then the second part of your question, like a location fee. So all like location fees are different. The most important ones, you usually want to pay them pretty well. So, if it takes place at a mansion, you pay for the cost of that mansion. So, I would say sometimes you can get, you can pay upwards of like 5,000 a day or maybe more for like a really nice house. You try to make it worth the time of the owner, because they're going to be temporarily displaced, or they're also going to be somewhat, they're going to be a little bit inconvenienced. So, because you're kind of breaking up their normal routine. So the general thing to do is always just, treat them like royalty, and pay them well and put them up in nice accommodations so that they're satisfied.
How do you even go to I mean, Mr. Salesman, what's your pitch? To go
Um,
like the million, I don't, is it called Millionaires Row? These like beautiful North Park, South Park, these beautiful
oh
roads
yeah.
to drive on to get to high school, and just like looking at these amazing houses. I mean, do you literally go knock on the door and say, "Hi, I'm the location scout"?
Yeah, I mean, usually what I do is I make sure to have a business card with me. I also will typically type out a letter on our letterhead that states what production company that we're working with. Now, sometimes we're not able to say fully what the movie is or what company it is, but usually each production company, they set up a sub name for a film. So for the case of like we'll say Captain America Winter Soldier, there was a word we had to call it freezer burn.
That's
And
really funny.
so like,
Freezer.
yeah, we could never call it Captain America, but we also couldn't say Marvel, but we had to say like Vita Ray Productions. So you give the letter that says that stuff, because sometimes when you're knocking on the door, especially it's during the day, sometimes you might have maybe one of the, who a spouse or one of the significant others is home by themselves. Usually they want to check it with their other significant other to get the okay to do the scouting. And sometimes they will also I always provide the number for the film commission so they can verify that I am legit. Because sometimes when you get something like that, you might think, in this day and age, and rightfully so, some people might think, oh, that sounds like a scam. So you basically, I would say usually you get about that 1.5 to 2 minutes to legitimize yourself, show that you have a business card, give the letter, explain what you're trying to look for. And I think more times than not, people are interested. But some people will be flat out not interested. Just, especially older couples, I tend to find are not that interested. But a lot of times, like younger people, you start to say this is a movie, they start to get excited for some reason. So you just earn their trust. That's the best way to go about it.
Interesting. Oh, I love it. So then when it comes to opening the set that day and closing it, you said long hours because you got to be there the whole time. You're probably the first one there and the last one there.
Exactly. So typically, you have like the location manager, or and then each set has an assistant location manager. So you each, like, basically the one thing with locations in a movie is you always have to be thinking ahead. So you might be at, say, like Progressive Field one day, but then once everybody lands and they start filming, you would have an assistant on site to make sure everything's taken care of, in case, like, because the assistant director might have some questions, or hair and makeup might need a place to do the makeup for the actress or actor. And so you have the assistants to take care of that. Then as a manager or an ALM, you're then setting up the next day's set. So a lot of times you would, and also a good manager staggers the start times for people. So if you have a good team, and sometimes, like, you can have a team of 10, or it always depends on the budget size. I've worked on movies where we had a team of 3 on the locations, so that it was kind of hard to stagger the schedule. But when you have about 10 or more, you can have a starter, you can have somebody who comes in a little bit after, and then you also can have a closer. So yeah, it's so yeah, that's basically what it's like. Typically the call times at the beginning of the week are about 6 a.m. So that means the locations person would probably get there about maybe 4, because hair and makeup usually starts early, with you have to make sure that somebody's there to open the doors for them. And then as you go, I don't know what that feedback is. But then as you go along, it's it goes faster. But I think starting early is always.
Interesting. I've noticed that on days that I've been on set, it's like the first day is always the earliest, and the next day the call time might be a little bit later, a little bit later, a little bit later.
Yeah.
And it always sets at the beginning of the week.
Well, I'm sorry.
And then the call times and everything just resets at the beginning of the week.
Typically, it's always sometimes on location availability, and it's also usually depending on how much time the lead actors had rest over the week. So say if, like, it's a Friday night and you don't finish till like 5 a.m., I think by SAG laws or SAG rules, they have to have at least 48 hours of downtime. So it's a lot of the actors hold a lot of power over the termination over the determination of the call time.
Okay, good to know. Gosh, it's so interesting. One more question about locations.
Sure.
I've wondered about the duplication, using the same locations in multiple films. There's a little neighborhood, little town, I guess, in Massachusetts. I went to school out there, that is called Shelburne Falls, that's famous for being used a lot because there aren't any fast food chains. So it can be used for really quaint little towns.
Yeah.
But imagining it's been used many times. How do you deal with that? Is there some rule about you can't use the same shot, or has to be a different angle?
Not really. I mean, last night we visited a set for a film that's shooting here called Shelby Oaks, and they're shooting at a place in Richmond Heights that is called the Greenwood Farm, and it's been used in about three or four, five films. Um, and in different, there are certain different angles. Like, yeah, you can make it look like a totally different place. It's always usually determined by the art direction and the cinematography, and um, you know, the probably the movie that shot there the longest was called The Bye Bye Man, and that one had a very, they used it, pretty well. But then we had a movie a year later called Little Evil that used the same house, and it's almost unrecognizable. So there's just a lot. There's no really like written rules that you have to change it up or anything, but a lot of times, if you have you can use it as how you want, but you always are kind of mindful of things that have shot there previously, so you don't replicate the same things.
Okay. That's not that's not bad. That's not too restrictive.
Yeah,
So for movies to come here and use our locations, will you tell me about the Greater Cleveland Film Commission? Tell me about tax incentives. What's the deal?
absolutely. So we offer in the state of Ohio a 30% tax credit or tax rebate based on a minimum spend of $300,000 in the state of Ohio. So I always use this example. If your movie costs $1 million, you would typically get $300,000 back. And that's very popular amongst a lot of different states. There are currently 29 states that have tax incentives. The states that don't have tax incentive typically don't get movies. So we are currently working to make some changes to the tax credit that would raise it, because currently we are capped at 40 million per year for projects. Georgia, for example, is uncapped, so that's why they have so many films going there. New York is at 435 million a year. So we are trying to raise it to at least 100 million so that we can have more projects as the year goes on.
Right, because that 100 million is shared between projects, right? And once it's
Exactly.
on,
Exactly.
right? Okay. How interesting.
So, so yeah, I mean and that is adhered by the state, but we as the Cleveland Film Commission, we advocate, to get people to come to the state. And even if a movie, if we're talking to a filmmaker and they decide that Cleveland doesn't work for them, we will still encourage them to talk to the different parts of the state, like Columbus or Cincinnati, because we consider it still a win if it comes to Ohio.
Right. Brilliant. So what can we do? Like, is there a senator we can call? Is there a script we can use to say, hey, I'm in this industry. Um, let's bring more stuff here.
We have current soon we're going to be probably putting out some information where people can write certain senators and house members in the state to help get this over the hump. There is a legislation that was just introduced that will make significant changes that are really going to be a game changer for Ohio. So I would say stay close to clevelandfilm.com. We're going to have all the info. A couple years ago, we almost lost our tax credit. We all went down to Columbus in a big bus, and we kind of showed, I think, the state that, hey, this is important, and this is a good way to keep a lot of young people here in the state instead of moving to other states.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll definitely, once we have that information, I will link that. I mean, I'll link the general website below to begin with, but any information about that, I'm definitely going to include and push people
Absolutely.
because it would be really nice to have more agency in our careers and to help move things along to improve the situation for everybody. So
Absolutely.
that's super exciting. And so you produce, you direct, you're working on a documentary right now
Yeah,
yourself. About your creative work where you're the one creating it.
sure. So there's a group of people that I tend to work with a lot. There's a writer director as well. Her name is Jessie Lee, and so we collaborate quite a bit. And I directed a short film called Goodbye Ohio with her. Um, and then she's had several things that she's written that now I produce and she's directed. So I think for Goodbye Ohio, she wrote it, but she wasn't very comfortable directing it. But I've encouraged her, to keep pursuing that. Now, where my directing work comes from is I've done a couple documentaries. So one was called "The End of the World as We Knew It," which is about an old radio station here in Cleveland. And then I'm currently working on a documentary about a filmmaker named Robert Banks. He is an underground filmmaker who's had movies shown all over the world. And sometimes, even in the city of Cleveland, people still don't know who he is. So I'm hoping to make it to shed light on this really talented guy who I think deserves a lot of admiration.
Absolutely. Well, I'm gonna be finding a picture of him to post up there for while you're talking about him. Wonderful. And so the one that you're working on now is Robert Banks. And then let's see. So are documentaries your primary interest? Are you planning on filming more shorts, more features, anything?
We
What else have you got up your sleeve?
Yeah, I think after this Robert Banks doc is done, because I've been working on it for a couple of years now, I'm ready to hopefully go into um, some some features, narrative features, and probably more on the producing side. We've been developing a project for my friend that I mentioned, Jesse Lee, and so hopefully we can get the funding together and hopefully make it within, we're hoping maybe within the next year or so. But getting the funding sometimes is never that easy.
Speaking of funding, what is the process? Because I've heard, I don't want to say horror stories, but like, I guess it was surprising to find out that it can take years and years and years to line up funding for a project. Maybe that's more specifically for independent stuff if you're kind of breaking into it. Tell me about finances.
Yeah, it's something that I've been working on to try to like crack that nut. We've a couple of the projects that we've worked on, we've done the crowdfunding like Indiegogo or Kickstarter. Um, we're at the point now where like we kind of feel like we've done those. Like we don't really want to keep going to that well. So right now, what we've been doing is, approaching different people that we've worked with in the past that we know might be interested. So um, I think part of it is like kind of like locations. You have to be a salesperson. So we've been putting together these pitch decks. So the pitch deck basically shows how you want to make the film. And sometimes you use like pictures from previously shot movies to kind of give a sense of what you're going for. And, say if you have certain actors in mind, um, I've for the one fortunate thing about working at the film commission is I've got to see a lot of these different pitch decks. When you get sometimes the script, you get the pitch deck as well. And so I've been able to kind of emulate some of those or show them to different people who put them together, just so it gives them the knowledge of how some of these are put together. So we've had, we're still kind of working on getting some of that financing. It has been taking a while. It's never easy because I mean it's one of those things where I think some of the people that I work with, we kind of come from like middle class families, so sometimes it's hard to ask somebody for money, because you're basically when you're making these things, you're kind of gambling with their money a little bit, and you want to make sure that you are comfortable getting the money back to them. So,
So, oh,
yeah,
question. So when asking for people, for sponsors and whatnot, the idea is that they will regain their finances
absolutely.
and on the project.
Yeah. So it's sometimes, I mean, you have to basically earn their trust, and, with the hope that you will get their money back. And a lot of times, like, if you have like a great script and you can attach actors, that's what sometimes gets people excited. And, they might give the money. Some people might be what's called an angel investor, and they might not really expect their money back, but they really want to support the project. Most people during the pandemic era, it's kind of tough sometimes to, for a lot of people's expendable income, maybe is not as fruitful as it once was. So yeah, it's always, it's an uncomfortable sometimes situation, but I think if you're confident in your project and the team that you've assembled, that you can, we can make some headroads. And I think we're close. We're like so close to cracking that nut. And but I don't want to like speak out of turn, so I'm gonna knock on wood and don't want to jinx myself.
So how do you determine how expensive a project is going to be?
Yeah, I mean, you do a comprehensive budget when getting ready to make it. And so that's basically a line producer or a unit production manager breaks down the script and determines, okay, you can probably make this in about, 20 days or so. If it's like, say if it's 100 pages, all right, you can maybe make this in 20 days. And then from that, you see the locations that are written in the script as well. It all comes back to that. And, then you determine what it would probably cost. And then you get like the general costs for crew members, because you want to make sure all your crew is happy. So you basically take the standard rates of what like a cinematographer and a grip and a gaffer and a sound person make, and you make a budget based on that.
Quick question. I actually don't know what the definition of a grip or a gaffer is. I've been meaning to
Sure.
investigate this and I always forget.
Sure. So the grip and a gaffer, they are in the camera department. They help light. Well, the gaffer is the lighter of the film, and the gaff, like, so the electrical department, they light. The grip department, they shape the light. So they often, when you see, when you're like, when you have a film and you have a, lights, and you might see a flag to kind of help, give somebody a shadow on the face. So they work together to shape the light. And they're directed by the director of photography to how to shape that light. So yeah, your gaffer is your electric, and sometimes they're called a juicer in different places. And then the grip is, they mold and shape the light.
Interesting. So let's talk about definitions a little bit. So we've got our grip, we have our gaffer. We've talked about the DP, the director of photography, who is your cinematographer. I'm curious, by your definition, what is a director exactly? Because I'm curious, I've wondered how closely the cinematographer works with the director, works with the writer. Also, there's producers giving their input. What is the dynamic there?
Yeah, so the director does, I mean, they're kind of, so the producer sees it through, but the director has the vision that kind of puts it all together. And their main job, of course, is to direct the actors.
Okay.
But leading up to a film, they will, a lot of times they will work on the storyboards, sometimes with the storyboard artists, because they know how they want to they know how they want the camera placement to be, or they know how they want to direct the actors. So the director and the cinematographer work really well together at the beginning, to really, they kind of pre-plan out everything, to be honest. And so they'll have, sometimes when you're leading up to a production, you have all these different meetings, and sometimes like the director and the cinematographer will have hours together, so they know exactly when they're on the set. All the pre-production and planning, if it's done effectively, will be really effective on the day of the filming. So yeah, it's all a cohesive, it's really amazing sometimes how everything kind of works together. And if one piece is like out of place, it can all fall apart. But a strong director will make sure that it's all together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, that's really cool. God, the more I hear about like directing and producing, I'm like,
Well, I mean, so many actors eventually become directors because, they've probably picked up things from their, previous directors. And I mean, it is really a great, having directed some stuff. I mean, it's a great feeling to be, the person that everybody kind of relies on and looks to. But it really is a team aspect. And I mean, from the smallest role of, a production assistant to the top, the way, like I said, the way how it all kind of comes together, and everybody, I think that's why I'm always so profoundly sad when a movie is done filming. It's because even if you have some of the same people, it's never always the exact same people again. So it's like a summer camp sometimes, where it's like you go to summer camp, you had like the best year, and then the next year, oh, somebody, Sally's not here this year, so that's,
everybody's a
yeah.
year older, and yep, yep.
Yeah, I usually have this, like when a movie wraps, it's like 3 or 4 days of, I call it like a mourning phase, because it's like it's everything in your life for that 3 to 4 to sometimes it could be months, and then it's over, and you're not seeing all those same people the same day. It's a weird feeling to me sometimes, that it's just like it's everything and then it's done.
Gosh, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
But the intensity of it. I mean, and being on, I mean, I've most recently been on more independent sets, which are smaller, and I get to have
Yeah.
input on ideas of how things ought to be done and like that kind of thing, which is very fun. But like having been on larger sets, like huge sets, like Wheat Germ, for example,
Yeah.
mm, and there was another Netflix one that Angela cast um, down in Georgia in Augusta. I,
Yeah.
I can't wait for that one to come out. But being on these bigger sets, just the intensity between
Yeah.
people who work there. And some sets seem quite positive, and others there can be a little bit of like toxic stress going on. In your opinion,
Absolutely.
whose job is it to figure out what's going on like socially and create, like, set the stage for and maintain a positive environment?
Hmm. That's a good question. I would say a lot of times the first AD, the first assistant director, is I think that's part of their job, is to keep everybody happy. And the first assistant director they basically give the marching orders, and they make sure that the day goes efficiently. And sometimes if there is tenseful moments on the stress, they or on the set, they can help alleviate some of that stress. So yeah, I would say they are. And a lot of times those assistant directors like to go out afterwards and, grab drinks or something, it's, I mean, that's a part of the filmmaking process as well. I mean, there, obviously it's long hours, like locations, a lot of times we couldn't really go out afterwards because like we're like dead tired. But I do think, say if you ever get to work on a set, for anybody who's watching this and whoever gets to work on a set, and if you're one of those people who's just like, oh, I just want to go home, like if you have the opportunity to have that like post film day, even if you're not a drinker, just going with the people, building the camaraderie, that's what really like builds a team. And that's why so many people like working with each other, because that's just it makes it exciting, I think.
Well, and when at the end of the day, it's a people's industry.
Yeah.
It comes down to the people and the network that you build and just the whole community, right? Because
Yeah,
why on earth would any of those long hours be worth it?
absolutely.
Like there needs to be something, by my estimation, there needs to be something deeper to tie people in and keep them coming back, because I'm just astounded by the hard work of the crew and
Yeah,
everything that goes into it. I mean, the actors, I get why actors in on larger productions are kept separate to so they're not exhausted by the
yeah,
time they actually have to be on set, having, why they get to maintain that privacy to an extent. But just being on all the time for 18 hours, whatever it be, like, you got to
yeah,
be really dedicated. And it's just so interesting as well, observing the different industry people. Everybody's got their job. It's so hierarchical. Um,
yeah,
and people are so interesting. Like I notice a lot of interesting fashion on sets and lots of just alternative folks. And you wonder, like, okay, so you didn't fit in elsewhere and you carved your own way here. I just, is there, I mean, there's not one individual, there's not like one single type of person who is drawn to this industry, or are there characteristics that you would say draw people?
yeah. I mean, I think you have sometimes different departments bring you different type of people. There's a lot of like the first AD, there are a lot of like A-type personalities, because they have to keep everything in line. Art department tends to be, a lot of them are very like kind of bohemian, they're kind of art. I mean, they are artsy, in a ways. Location types can sometimes be, you know, I mean, I'm probably one of the more like laid back locations people. Sometimes locations people can be kind of uptight a little bit, but not in a bad way, but it's just because there's so much responsibility. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different, you have a lot of different personality types, and not everybody, maybe not everybody gets along with some of those personality types, but I think you learn to put those aside, because you're all there for one goal, to make this movie and make it the best that you can. So even if there's personality clashes, I think you always get to, at the end of the day, you get to make it.
Amazing. Yeah. I just, I never expected to end up in this industry, but it's so exciting. And the more I learn about it, the more exciting it gets.
Yeah.
So it's just, it's incredible. I'm wondering if I missed anything that I really wanted to ask you about. Um, I guess the last question I would have would be, as a creator, what legacy would you like to leave behind?
That's a great question. um I think if I think at the end of the day, there's like maybe two or three things. One thing that I hope to leave behind, like, say if I ever retire, is that people know that I gave as much as I can, over 100%, maybe, for the film industry here in Cleveland. I think that would be one thing that I would really be happy for. Secondly, if this if this new doc that I'm working on hits a certain audience that I'm hoping that it will hit, if it can get into, if it can get distribution, I would be I would like immensely happy about that. I think that that's one thing that I'm really hopeful for, to have something that goes national. I think that would be cool, because then people will, because I've had a lot of stuff that's played locally, and I'm known locally, but probably not known nationally. So, but not every person gets that. But I think even if it's just one film, that would be great, that played outside of here. But yeah, I think that's, yeah. I mean, but I don't know. I hope that I'm able to keep a lot of the friendships that I've made through this industry, and just help continue to usher new people into it. I think, I had a lot of help when I was coming into it, and there was a lot of rejections, to first get onto certain jobs and everything. So now it's time to, I've had a lot of opportunities. So now it's time to make sure to give back and help new people get into it.
That's wonderful, Mike. And, the more I talk to people, this through line of help, receiving help, just information, a contact, a chat, advice, all that kind of thing is just, it's so strong. And all the people I talk to, who have been in the industry for a long time, everybody says, well, I had people helping me. I had people answering my questions. There were always people showing up to help, which is why I love asking people such as yourself to share their story and share their wisdom, so that hopefully somebody will hear what they need to hear to bolster them to act. And when I say act, I mean take agency of their career, whatever it be, to
Sure.
act upon their notion that perhaps they would like to further their investment in this industry and pursue their dreams. Do you have any parting wisdom, parting advice to people just getting into it? Any aspect of it? Actors, directors,
Yeah.
scripts, gaffers?
Yeah. No, I mean, it might come off, I hope a lot of times when I give some of this advice, I hope it doesn't come off cliche. But I'll I'll tell a real quick story, because I know we're already probably way over. But so like several years ago, I badly wanted to work on the Avengers. It was coming here, everybody knew about it. I got an opportunity to interview on it, and I didn't get the job. And I was just, at the time, I was kind of crushed, because it seemed like everybody was working on it. And so I made sure to follow up with the person that I interviewed, thank them for that, and then also just ask for some feedback. Like, did I, hey, I know I didn't get the job, but any advice that you can give me. So, I was told to, basically reformat some of your resume, maybe be more confident in your interview skills, and just get some more experience, even if it's on the small jobs, just get more experience. And I thought that was really helpful, because it kind of helped blow the sting a little bit. And he also mentioned, like, hey, a lot of people also interviewed for this, so it's totally cool. And so then I reached back out a couple years later, when it was announced that Captain America was coming, to the same person. He was doing the hiring, and it was then I got on Captain America. So it's one of those things where I would tell young people that any rejections that you get, and you really want to work in this industry, don't let it stop you from reaching your goals. You may not get the Avengers, but then something else will come along. So that's my parting words for anybody trying to get into this industry. It can be tough at times, and it can be one of those things where, it can be a pain, but I think it's very important to just keep moving forward and, keep working on yourself. And I think eventually hard work does really pay off.
That's wonderful. And to play the long game. No?
Exactly.
They tell us when we audition to book the room, right? They say,
Exactly.
act your heart out or don't, because they want you to be authentic, right? And not to be so attached to individual jobs, just
Yeah.
because you never know who will see you 10 times and finally on the 11th time be like, woohoo, we have the perfect thing for you. And they're just waiting to give it to you. So
Yeah.
after having followed up, I mean, that guy knew who you were. You you primed. What did I say? Primed. Well, you primed yourself for the next one.
Yeah.
So that's wonderful. Well, Mike, this has been fabulous. You've given me a lot of information. Thank you so much for your education and your advice. I look forward to seeing you speak in person and to meeting you around town. So
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
thank you. I'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.